Hope you had a good lunch. This is always the trickiest slot of the day, isn't it? Hope you didn't have too much carb. I'll try not to send you to sleep. My name's Tom Llewelyn. I'm a sales engineer at Chainguard. And most of you probably never heard of us. We're a fairly new company. We've been going 4 years in the US, for about a year in Europe. But Chainguard is all about how do we get open source software to end users in a secure manner. And that's essentially the foundation of what I'm going to talk about today. But the inspiration for the title actually came from one of our customers, where he was asked about, what was the challenge that Chainguard helped him address. And he was saying that, I'm sure you'll have experienced this. Some of you might be on the technology side, on the innovation side. Some of you might be on the security side. But you're often seen as fighting against each other. Security want to lock things down and make sure things are, you're not going to get breached, and that there's this compliance and secure foundation to what you're doing. Whereas the technology people want to innovate as quickly as they can and see security as hampering them and blocking them and slowing them down. And what he said was, actually, by integrating and bringing the security workflows into the development process as early as possible, you can actually make things secure by default, which means that you can now unlock innovation, because you're actually freeing up developer time from having to worry about that whole compliance and security process, because it just becomes baked into their normal workflow. So it's transparent to them. And that's essentially what we try and do at Chainguard. We do it specifically for open source software. And the challenge that we're addressing and why Chainguard came about was essentially because of this picture, that where the innovation happens in open source is in the upstream open source projects, where you have contributors. Many of them these days are professional, employed by large companies, but they're working in this open source project where the ethos is very much move fast, break things, iterate, keep going, move forward, and fix things quickly. Whereas you as the end user, in order to consume that open source software that they're producing, are typically 2-3 steps removed from that, where you have a distribution that's packaging that software up, and then that's then being repackaged by a vendor and then distributed to you as an end user. So if you want to take advantage of some new feature or to get a fix for a vulnerability that's happened upstream, the delay to that can be weeks, months before you get it, because you have to wait for each step to iterate. And that leads to this picture. So this is vulnerabilities in particular. So what we're seeing is, the vulnerability discovery and rate of discovery and the vulnerability count is doubling year on year. So this goes up to 2023. It's still carried on increasing beyond that, of how many vulnerabilities are found in open source software per year. But the mean time for remediation in an enterprise is 275 plus days. And why is that? And it's because of that previous picture. It's because the time taken for that to get to you as an end user is going through all these various steps, and you're having to wait for each previous step to complete before you can take to the next one. So this is what we've done at Chainguard. We're saying, one of the other common themes you'll hear in the security industry at the minute is this shift left. And what shift left means is try and move that security control earlier in the development process. And that's a good thing to do. But what it actually has meant in terms of implementation very often is that the software engineers are now responsible for fixing those CVEs, for fixing those vulnerabilities. The average time taken is 4 hours per developer per year, which it just adds up in a large enterprise in terms of how much this is costing you. So what we've said at Chainguard is, rather than shifting left, why not start left? Why not We create a secure foundation for you to consume that's had all that work done for you already. And this is how we do it. In terms of this is the factory we've built that takes source code from the open source projects and rebuilds it continuously. This automation process has got an awful lot of testing built into it as well, so it's fail-safe. So we only publish things that work. And then once we've built the open source packages, we then package them up initially into container images, which is how we distribute them, but also now we're doing VM images, et cetera, where essentially we're taking that open source code and delivering it and updating it continually. And we rebuild the entire catalog of software that we produce on at least a daily basis. And what that means for you as a consumer is you then, the software you bought from us drops into your customer repository, and that gets updated daily. That doesn't mean that you have to keep rebuilding your systems daily or deploying daily. But what it means is that next time you need to update because there's something in there that needs updating, the version that you're going to get from us will be as up-to-date as possible and as vulnerability-free as possible. And so your engineers now no longer have to worry about how am I going to fix things? How am I going to get the new version? It's just a case of when do I make the decision to take that new version and upgrade? And so that frees up so much time and concern from them in terms of having to deal with that never-ending cycle of, we refer to it as the doom cycle of how do I fix the CVEs in this? And often, there is no fix, and so you're into triage and remediation process. Whereas what we deliver to them is an already remediated version of the software. The other thing is it's not just about vulnerability remediation. That's a big part of it. But it's also about how do you make it verifiable? So a lot of the attacks that we're seeing at the moment in terms of the open source language ecosystem, so NPM, the Shai-Hulud is all over the news at the minute. This verifiable build from source gives you the confidence that what you're running is safe and isn't just some random thing built by somebody on the internet or hasn't had malware injected into it. So minimal is a big part of it. Only include the components you need. Malware resistant, so make sure that what you're building is built from a trusted source, and also we do things like behavioral deltas between builds. So if a component is suddenly doing something it's never done before, that will be flagged and will cause an engineer in our build process to go and look, is this a genuine new feature, or is this a malware injection? Signatures, so everything we do, every time we build an artifact, we sign it and we publish the signature to a global transparency log that you can then use. And also the bill of materials we generate at the end. So any package that we're delivering to you, we generate an SBOM, we sign that SBOM too, we embed it into the artifact. So everything that we're doing is giving you this secure foundation to start from. And now you can create a policy that says everything you do must be based on things that pass this signature check. And your developers now are freed up. They're not having to worry about how to be secure. It's taken care of for them. And yeah, what does this lead to? Reduces your operational risk, obviously. If the software that you're running has come from a known trusted source, you no longer have to worry about verifying what's in there. If you are in a regulated industry where you have compliance standards you have to meet, we work with regulators. We build to a number of compliance standards FedRAMP in the US is a big market for us, but we have UK Cyber Essentials, we have various other compliance standards that we adhere to in what we build, and we can help you towards achieving compliance against any other audit standard out there. And then, as I've said, so this is where this innovation part comes up, that essentially by taking that whole security compliance requirement and putting it at the very start of your development process, so you're consuming a source that's already conforming to what you need, you no longer have to put that onus back on the developer. So it's not shift left, it is start left. And that frees the developers up to then use the latest things that are out there, but in a safe way that's verifiable and reduces the risk in your business. And a quick proof point, so Anduril, one of our customers in the US, sort of says it best, now that we've implemented Chainguard, our developers no longer have to worry about patching underlying base images, they just focus on what they do best. That zero CV by default gives them faster innovation, quicker time to market, lets their developers focus on what's needed. So a quick whistle-stop tour, I think, but hopefully gives you a flavor of how we can help in terms of giving you a secure foundation and how that foundation then gives you a way to innovate without compromising on security. So, thank you very much. Any questions?
I have a question. Usually the whole topic of...
Sorry, I'm deaf, you'll have to speak up. But
usually the topic of software development lifecycle security is quite a cultural shift for dev communities. How do you approach this? I mean, obviously it's always nice to have a good tool that helps you enable this.
Mm-hmm.
But where do you start?
How do we start? Yeah, it's a very good question. And usually we start with a project. So start small, identify maybe one application team. And because yes, you're right, it depends on the organization, but it can be a big cultural shift sometimes. So having one specific application and working with that one team, start small, expand outwards. Because this can be adopted incrementally. There's no reason why you have to, big bang, go from one site to the other. You can, even within a project, you could use half the images could come from this secure source, and that's still improving your security posture. So there's that incremental step is the way to do it. And big bangs, yeah, we've never seen a big bang really work with this. We always go through an adoption process. And a lot of what we do as an organization as well, we have education materials, we have customer success team where that onboarding process will typically take months to a year once a customer said, yes, we want to move to Chainguard. It's not then, yeah, right, there we go, switch it over tomorrow. It does take time. And yeah, we as an organization reflect that in terms of how we engage, how we build up that confidence, build up that capability over time. Any other questions? Yeah.
Does this tend to be a security-led initiative or a developer-led initiative to...
Another very good question, yeah. In terms of where we initially engage, it's kind of 50-50 between security and technology. The security conversation is usually quite straightforward in terms of once they understand what we do, there is, they're on board with, yes, this is a good idea. Reducing our vulnerability count, improving our secure foundation for what we're doing, you know, that verifiability, et cetera, that's a good idea. The challenge then will become, right, but yes, it's the engineering teams, the lines of business building the applications that actually need to make the changes to adopt it. So then we ask the security to sponsor us into that technology. When we come into the technology side of the business first, that's often an easier path because then we're talking to the right people to start with because they are the ones who are going to have to implement this. And then they go to security and say, this is what we want to do. And then obviously then security still say, yes, this is a good idea. And typically, you know, in terms of funding this, that's always going to come from within the technology function because it's them that's bearing the cost of change, essentially. So even if it was free, there would still be a cost of change to them to adopt it. Yeah. Any other questions?
You mentioned about the CVEs, CVE1. What about the non-CVE vulnerabilities? How do you tackle those?
Yeah, so the beauty of what we do is that actually, if you look at our advisory feed, so a CVE is just something that's, it's a bug that's been deemed to be security valid enough that it gets given a number in a database. But there are a whole load of them that don't. So the GitHub security advisories, for example, that you will see on a project, we pick up all of them because we are just building from the source and we're following the open source projects. And where we see vulnerabilities, we proactively patch sometimes. We can take things from a feature branch, bring them into our version to fix earlier. So yes, in terms of, if you remember, was it last year there was the NVD stopped publishing new CVEs and there was some concern about the funding and all of that. And, you know, the people were asking us at that point, well, what happens to Chainguard? And essentially it doesn't affect us in terms of what we do and produce. It affects the reporting because obviously if there aren't CVEs being added, we then have to fall back onto however else those vulnerabilities are being defined. But we pick up all of them. It's not just CVEs. Yeah, thank you very much.